In the meantime, let's move from Washington now to the Middle East. Live picture there over Jerusalem, you see there, nighttime. Well, I want to put up this tweet from Barak Ravid there at Axios. He has this reporting that the Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal has officially been signed in Doha. Sources to Ravid there. Fox's Trey Yingst has more from the region.
Israeli airstrikes killed dozens in Gaza just a day after the announcement of a new ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Negotiators in Qatar brokered the three-phase deal that would see a pause in the fighting and the hostages returned home in exchange for more aid and the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. But on Thursday morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said a last-minute disagreement is delaying his final approval, and he canceled a planned cabinet vote on the deal.
The Israeli government wants this deal to be finalized, but it cannot be a deal which is correct in some places and not in others.
The sticking point appears to be Israel's demand for a veto over which prisoners would be exchanged for the hostages. Hamas claims that was worked out during the negotiations, and it remains committed to the ceasefire deal.
We are now facing a new phase in our proud Gaza, through which we can confirm to the world that we are a free people who build and do not destroy.
Netanyahu could be stalling for time to sell the deal to his more conservative coalition partners. Some have threatened to leave the government if the agreement isn't amended, putting Netanyahu in a difficult position as he also faces pressure from the families of hostages to get the deal done.
We are, as you said, very much in limbo and extremely concerned that our government is not acting in good enough faith to make this happen.
The ceasefire was supposed to go into effect on Sunday, but Netanyahu says there will be no deal until Hamas backs down. In Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
Trey, thanks so much. So Trey filing that report a little bit earlier today. We're getting some new details about whether or not the deal is final, reported by Axios there. Let's talk about all of this with our friend there, Union for Reform Judaism President Rabbi Rick Jacobs. He joins me. Rabbi Jacobs, thanks for being with us. We had to get you on. You and I have discussed this topic so often here. Is the deal final, or are there still outstanding snags, would you say?
It seems that there are still some outstanding snags. It may be details of the actual arrangement. You have to remember this is a deal that was largely formulated in May. And it certainly was something we had hoped for in May or June, July, August. Here we are in January. The details matter. The question of which hostages and which prisoners. When we talk about the Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, it sounds very benign. But many of those that are scheduled to be released are actually terrorists convicted of murdering many Israelis. So there's a lot of emotion there. But as you also know, there's been a tremendous outpouring of support for this deal from across the political spectrum. But there's also a strong, I would say, far-right group that is protesting against the deal. And they're members of the coalition that are threatening to leave the coalition if the deal goes through. Prime Minister Netanyahu is caught in a web. We were supposed to see on Sunday the first hostages coming free. It was going to be in 3 different tranches, but honestly, it's still a question. And the cabinet has not yet voted to approve the deal. So on Israel's side, it's not absolutely signed. We saw that Barak Ravid said that it was, but honestly, we'll believe it when we see it.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to ask, is this a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Or is it just a deal?
You know what? If you spend time with the families, as I have, they're desperate.
Yeah.
The longer there is not a deal, the less likely their loved ones are coming home alive. So this is a deal we have to swallow. And, to give back these murderers is a hard price. But to get home Israelis who have been spending, a year and a half in horrific conditions in the tunnels of Gaza, it simply has to be done. I think the majority of Israelis agree with that. And I think Jews and people of conscience around the world understand that it must happen.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Rabbi, but the first and only deal that materialized back in November of 2023, did that also require a vote of the entire Knesset like this one?
It was a slightly different arrangement.
I see.
This is multi-phase. It also the question of, does this bring the war to an end? Is it a ceasefire? Is it a temporary truce? All those questions have gotten more heightened.
Okay.
I think we also have to pay attention to the U.S. administration that's been working on this, but credit has to also be given to President-elect Trump. His team, particularly Steve Witkoff, who is his Middle East envoy, has been in Qatar and has been a very important force in bringing the sides together. So a rare expression of partnership between the current American government and the incoming, but for a very noble cause.
To the layperson watching who's not familiar with Israeli politics or Jewish tradition even, could you explain, I'm getting this question from a lot of folks, the imbalance, why is it there? Why does Israel only get 33 of the 100-plus hostages still remaining, yet they have to release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners? Why the imbalance? Why would they go for that deal?
Well, let me put you back a little bit in history. The last major deal that we had going back to Gilad Shalit, one Israeli soldier who was in Hamas's control, he was kidnapped, spent 5 years there. They gave 1,000 security prisoners for the one Israeli soldier. I can't explain to you how that kind of proportion is worked out, but what we know is that is the cost, and it's a cost that has to be paid because these are lives of our loved ones. In the Jewish tradition, the redemption of kidnapped individuals is the highest obligation that we have. And so the cost is heavy, but the urgency and the life-saving quality of this deal is a must.
So does Hamas live to fight another day after and if phase one is complete?
Those are all the big questions, Andrew. After phase one, will there be a phase two? And frankly, you know, you have to remember, Hamas is not a state actor. They're a terrorist organization. And the idea that they will have integrity with commitments that they make is not something that Israelis or, frankly, anybody who's been watching or paying attention. They are greatly degraded. Obviously, the big question also after this ceasefire is what will be next? What will happen to Gaza? Will there be a better tomorrow? Will the people of Gaza, there's so many innocent Gazans who are caught in the midst of this war. They need to have humanitarian aid, but will their future have anything that will resemble a life of dignity? These are all really outstanding questions, and there really are not answers at this moment.
So I think it's so interesting that the Biden-Harris administration, in conjunction with National Security Advisor Sullivan, Secretary of State Blinken, and others, have been working around the clock for months to diplomatically secure this. And then you have some of these incoming Trump administration officials in the mix, and 5 days before he's sworn in as president, there is a deal on the table, and it's almost finalized. To me, that is quite stunning here. Former Democratic congressman from New Jersey, Tom Malinowski, he tweeted this today, Rabbi. He said this was Biden's deal, but as much as I hate to say it, he couldn't have done it without Trump. Not so much Trump's performative threats to Hamas, but his willingness to tell Bibi bluntly that the war had to end by January 20th. Why didn't Biden ever say that, do you think? Because you and I have discussed Biden and Bibi's very frosty relationship. He could have said that, right?
He could have said it, but it wouldn't have had the effect. I think what Trump has done here, and clearly the Israeli, country, if you would have taken an election poll, Israelis were overwhelmingly supportive of Donald Trump. And so Trump is trusted by Bibi as somebody who is going to be there, is going to have Israel's back in all cases. And so when Trump's emissary, Steve Witkoff, said, and Trump directly, Bibi, this is a deal. In fact, the first person to announce the deal was the President-elect Trump. He clearly put the pressure on, and Bibi cannot say no to Donald Trump. And Trump, I think, knows that well.
Okay, lastly, though, on Netanyahu, does he survive this politically? You mentioned already that kind of more right-wing members of his coalition have said, we're out if this goes through. So where does he come out of this?
I think if you had asked people 1 week after October 7th, did Prime Minister Netanyahu have any chance of enduring another month, another two, another year, the answers would have been absolutely not. He was somebody held responsible for the lack of preparedness But Prime Minister Netanyahu has reinvented his own leadership. He's gained strength. He's gotten a few more seats on the, on the coalition side. But the truth is, I would never count Netanyahu out unless you see it happen. But I do know that it is possible that his government could fall. And that's also what's going on quietly behind the scenes. He's negotiating to keep his coalition together so he can lead another day. I'm not sure if Israelis were all given the choice, they would want him to continue. But at this moment, that is part of the calculation.
All right, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, we'll leave it at that. But we are anticipating, and we are on the precipice for Sunday to see some of these really emotional, incredible scenes of the release of some of these hostages. We have not seen that since November of 2023, and it will be very, very tough to see those scenes live. We hope to bring it to our viewers. Rabbi, thanks so much.
Thank you.